Yeah. So we're learning Maseches Yoma,
Which is how do you pronounce it?
Some pronounce it Yoma, and some pronounce it Yuma. Yuma is the day, Yom Kippur. So we're holding at 15a1. Still in the first chapter. Shivas Yomim is the name of the chapter. And last we stopped is Be'idan Hatovo Tehei Makter Ketois.
Yeah.
The pasuk simply means that at the time when the preparation of the lamps is taking place, you should be offering the incense. Right? We said we discussed yesterday what interrupted the preparation of the menorah. Right, it was
5 weeks.
5 and 2. So is the interruption was for the dashing of the blood, or the interruption was for the incense? Right. So he writes, at the time when the preparation of the lamps is taking place, you should be offering the incense. So number one, when you prepare the last 2 lamps, the cloud from the incense you previously offered should now be rising from the altar. In order for this to happen, the incense must obviously be burnt before these lamps are prepared. Okay? For if you do not say this, but instead maintain that the pasuk requires all the lamps to be cleaned first, how will you interrupt scriptures? How you interpret scripture's description of the afternoon service? For the very next pasuk states, and when Aaron kindles the lamps in the afternoon, he shall bring the incense up in smoke. Here as well, would you say that since the pasuk places kindling lamps before incense, the Kohen must first light the lamps of the menorah, and only afterwards cause the afternoon incense offering to burn. So the Gemara shows why that conclusion is impossible. And should you say, indeed it is so, in the afternoon the lamps are lit before the incense is burnt, you would be mistaken, Vatanya, for it was taught in a Baisa, Me'erev ad Baker. Aaron and his sons shall arrange the lamps of the menorah from evening until morning. Here the pasuk teaches the following: Ten lamidasa, give the menorah its full measure of oil, so that it shall burn continuously all night from evening until morning. Another interpretation of the verse, Me'erev ad Baker, from evening until morning. You do not have any other service in the Beis Hamikdash valid from evening until morning except for this one of kindling the lamps alone. We find then that the kindling of the lamps is the last avodah of the day. All other daytime avodas, including burning the incense, must be performed before the lamps are kindled. Rather, we are forced to say, what did the Merciful One mean to say in the pasuk? And when Aaron kindles the lamps in the afternoon, he shall bring the incense up in smoke. It must mean, at the time when the lighting of the lamps is taking place, you should be offering the incense. Achanami, here as well, in the morning, is the same. As the pasuk means that at the time when the preparation of the lamps is taking place, you should be offering the incense. So the Gemara explains how Abba Shaul would respond to this argument. Abba Shaul would say to you, Shani Osam Dechtiv Oisei. There, with regard to the kindling of the lamps in the evening, it is different, for it is specially written, Aaron and his son shall arrange it, from evening until morning. This indicates that the kindling of the lamps in the afternoon is the last avodah performed during the day. And we are forced to say that the burning of incense does not come after it. In the morning, however, no such exegetical constraint exists. We are free to place the burning incense after the preparing of the lamps in consonance with the apparent implication of Scripture. So seemingly there's a difference between the morning and the afternoon. If you notice, what does it say? This indicates that the kindling of the lamps in the afternoon is the last avodah performed during the day. The last thing was done based on Mikdash during the day was the kindling of the lamps. So we are forced to say that the burning of the incense does not come after it. Because if it's the last avodah, then the kindling is the last thing. In the morning, however, we don't have that constraint. We don't have to say that. So we are free to place the burning incense after the preparing of the lamps. So, which means we're doing the incense before we kindle the lamps.
It says after the preparing the lamps.
Preparing and lighting is two different things.
Ah.
Preparing the lamps was one thing.
Ah.
Preparing the wicks, it was a whole avodah on its own. So the Gemara returns to the earlier cited conflict between our Mishnah and the later Mishnah as to whether the preparing of the lamps precedes the burning of incense. See, they use the word preparing, or the reverse. An alternative resolution of the contradiction is now offered. Rav Papa said there's no difficulty for this, our Mishnah, which places the burning of the incense first, reflect the view of the sages. Abba Shol was this other Mishnah in 25a, which places the preparing of the lamps first, follows the view of Abba Shol. The Gemara says, how have you construed our Mishnah here in this chapter? Kirabon, you have construed it as reflecting the view of the sages. Pious Abba Shol, and as for the later Mishnah, which discusses the daily lottery, you have construed that as reflecting the view of Abba Shol, but this seems unreasonable. Ema Sefer, for take note of the latter section of the Mishnah in Tractate Yoma, which states as follows: they brought a daily offering to the Kohen Gadol. He made the initial incision in the neck of the animal, and another Kohen completed the slaughter for him. Thereafter he entered the temple to burn the incense, and to prepare the lamps, noting that this Mishnah places the burning of incense before the preparing of the lamps. Right? It says Nichlas la'akter ketoros, and then it says Uleiti v'saneros. He entered to the temple to burn the incense and to prepare the lamps. So Ason leRabbanon, this last Mishnah clearly follows the view of the sages, but you are then forced to say Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanon, the beginning, later part of the tractate, reflect the view of the sages. Umetzi aso Abba Shol. Yet its middle section reflects the view of Abba Shol. This combination, however, seems unreasonable. Papa ein Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanon. It is indeed so. The beginning and later sections reflect the sages, and the middle section reflects the opinion of Abba Shol. Abaya and Rav Papa have now each set forth their ways of reconciling the conflicting Mishnahs. The Gemara explores why each rejects the proposal offered by the other. Bishlama Abaye loy omar lach Rav Papa. Says all is well according to Abaye. He does not say as Rav Papa does that the Mishnah reflects the view of the sages and Abba Shaul respectively. Reisha v'Seifa Rabbanon u'Metzios Abba Shaul le'Merkim lo. Because he would not wish to establish the beginning and later sections of Mishnah as reflecting the sages and the middle section as reflecting Abba Shaul. But as for Rav Papa, why does he not say as Abaye does, that both Mishnahs reflect the view of the sages, yet one speaks of the first 5 lamps and the other speaks of the subsequent 2? Amar lo, Rav Papa would say to you, Tana bereisha atovas shteneos. Would the Tana first mention in the earlier Mishnah the preparation of the 2 lamps, V'ada atovas chamesh neos, and subsequently in the later Mishnah mention the preparation of the 5 lamps, since in practice the Kohen would prepare the 5 lamps before the 2, the Tana ought not to have mentioned them in the reverse order. Abaye, like Chayav, has to. Yeah. So the Gemara conjunctures.
Means like should.
Yeah.
Should not.
How Abaye might respond to this. Abaye Amarloch, well Abaye would say to you, O Yeba'ama the Kamara. In the first chapter of our tractate, which does not detail in the order of Yom Kippur service per se, the Tana is just teaching things in general terms, as he relates the activities of the Kohen Gadol during the 7 days of sequestration. But the precise order of the actual Aveda he teaches us only later in the 2nd and 3rd chapters of the tractate. So first he tells us the different Avedas, but later on he tells us the exact order. So in 17 it says, hence first when the Tana is not primarily concerned with teaching the order of the service, he happens to mention the preparation of the last 2 lamps in relation to the burning of the incense. Later, the 2nd and 3rd chapters of the tractate, however, the Tana's main thrust is aimed at establishing the order of the service. And in these chapters, he first mentions the preparing of the first 5 lamps, and then the preparation of the subsequent 2. In
I'm sorry.
in connoissance with their proper order. Yeah, what you say?
That seems sloppy though. That the mission is all about teaching and giving over the Masorah to us. So wouldn't they be concerned immediately with, as long as they're discussing it anyway, discuss the order as part of it? Why have it slightly confusing and slightly say, oh, but he mentioned this one first and that. And then later now we're talking about the order.
It could be that they're not going to be satisfied with this answer, but it's sometimes, let's say a guy comes to you and you give a teaching and you say, how do you drive a car? Well, there's many things to drive a car. You put this, you do A, B, C, D. And then he said, well, exactly, how do I do it exactly? So he said, well, first step.
I agree, right. And that's, I would object to that. Because that's, driving a car, yeah. Oh, no, first you got to put it in gear before you go forward. But in Mishnayos, it's not as casual as a car instruction. It's we're giving them a Masorah that's going to last for thousands of years.
No, but the Mishnayos were very cryptic. That's why that's where the Gemara even because of all the possible scenarios that are not mentioned in the Mishnah, and there's so many things that are vague when you just read the Mishnah.
Okay.
At least that's the answer of that's what Abaye would say to you. But the reason, look, he says also in the first chapter, look at the words they're using. He said, in the first chapter of our tractate, which does not detail the order of Yom Kippur service per se. It's not about the details of the order. Meaning, it wasn't the focus of this chapter. So that's why I'm not even dealing with the order. It's not the focus of this chapter. You're challenging me about the order. I'm not here for this. I'm not here to discuss the order.
No.
And that maybe can even say, hey, they're trying to be more descriptive, but this chapter is focuses on the 7 days. That's the main focus of the chapter.
Okay.
So instead, they're going ahead. So these guys, they already know what's in page 25,
Right.
and they already know what's written in Maseches Tamid, and they say, hey, this is challenging. This is not exactly in line with the Maseches Tamid. This is not in line with the Mishnah in 25ab or whatever.
Yeah, right. I hear it.
The Gemara returns to elucidate an earlier section of Mishnah, along with an accompanying brisa. To me, it reminds like someone that is a pilot for 25 years, and then he was not. He just he knew how to fly. He learned it from his grandfather. His father was a pilot. His father was a pilot. He knows how to fly. Then he goes to a flying school and he starts listening to the guy, and he says, 1 second, but that's not how we do this, but that's not how we do that.
Right.
He said, well, how did you jump the gun? I'm not there.
Right.
Because this person already knows all those steps ahead, so he's challenging about those steps. The goof of Baal Ken
Did you ever see a
is
private plane guy go through the steps? They have a clipboard or something in the old days. I mean, but they would check this, check the flaps, check the lights, check that. The checklist is exhaustive.
wow.
And they'd go through because you go up in the air.
One mistake and you're finished.
You can't have one thing missing, and they would go through each thing. I was in a private plane with a guy, he went through that, and then it got interrupted for something. He had to start at the beginning, and he went through, boom, because they have to go through the way they train, they have to go through every step. And we were partway through it, boom, okay, boom, 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 everything's good, then boom.
So that's why he's probably there an hour or more before, right?
Yeah. You have to, you want to take off at 9 o'clock, you don't show up at 5 to 9.
It's amazing that the passenger planes, they can turn around so fast now.
No, but I'm sure they're there before the flight also.
No, but okay, a plane. Okay, let's say you're going to New York, but you're going at 10 o'clock in the morning. The plane, that plane left 6 o'clock from New York. First flight out might have been at 6 o'clock in the morning. It gets there 9:15. 10 o'clock, that plane is ready to go back to New York, and we're on the plane.
But that's already planned before the return. Meaning,
Yeah, they got someone going through the steps.
They have it down.
right.
Okay. I'm just saying how
I was
fast.
once in the airport in Brazil.
Yeah.
I was in the line to just to give the baggage, my baggage, and there was a storm. The skies in the day was dark. I was afraid. I didn't want to get the plane.
Right.
So I told my wife, there are 2 pilots. They're looking the sky. They're looking like you have a big mirror, big screen, like window. They were watching. I came in their side. I told him, "Are you afraid?"
Yeah.
Like this. Are you afraid? He said, "Why?" No, because the storm, lightings. So
Yeah.
I can't. And he answers me like this: "When it's raining, are you afraid to take your car out of the garage?" I said, "No, I just drive
More
slowly."
carefully, right.
So we do the same.
So
we have more.
They're used to
Very
it.
careful.
They're used to being a
got on the
pilot.
plane?
You're probably not used to being a pilot of a plane, right? They are.
So you got on the plane?
Yes.
Okay.
He's here, right?
And the plane has to change the city in the middle of no food. We don't eat, but no food, and they have to change the city because of the storm. We were afraid.
Change the seating.
Yeah, instead
To balance the plane.
Yeah, instead of landing in one city, they change it. As I told Tamara, I'm gonna drop down and I'm take a taxi. I can't. I hate planes.
So the Gemara says, "Gufa Baal Ken Domis Zochis Tzvainis." The Kohen selected to throw the blood of the Tamid offering arrives at the northeast corner of the altar, and standing at the foot of the altar, he throws blood from the offering on the northeast corner. He then circles the altar. And once he arrives at the southwest corner, he throws blood from the offering upon the southwest corner. And concerning the teaching of this Mishnah, it was taught in a Baisa, Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah Meshane B'Samid. Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah alters this procedure with reference to the Tamid. He asserts that the blood application procedure of the Tamid differs from that of a standard oil offering as follows. The Kohen arrives at the northeast corner and throws the blood on the northeast corner. But then he approaches the southwest corner. He places blood on the western wall of the altar. And just after rounding the southwest corner, he places blood on the southern wall of the altar. The sage's prescription for the blood placement of the Tamid, a type of oil, is the same as that for standard oil. There's a standard oil and there's the Tamid, which is also treated like oil. Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, however, prescribes a new kind of blood application procedure for the Tamid. The Gemara now seeks to clarify the basis for his view. My time with Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah? Why does he require two distinct applications at the altar's southwest corner, unlike any other oil? And one he-goat for a chatas offering to Hashem, in addition to the continual oil offering, shall it be made, and its wine libation. Oilo he, the Tamid is most certainly an oil offering. Yet, in this pasuk, the merciful one states that the Kohen shall also perform the procedure of a chatos in connection with it. How is this done? How could the offering be treated both as an ola and as a chatos? It says, first, the Kohen performs one application of blood that is tantamount to two, in the manner one would expect for an oil offering. And then, when the Kohen reaches the diagonally opposite corner of the altar, he performs two blood applications that are two genuinely separate applications, in the manner resembling the blood service of a chatas. This then is how Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah arrives at his position regarding the blood service of the Tamid. The Gemara suggests an alternative way of reconciling the conflicting demands of the verse. But why do you say that half the blood service should resemble an oila and half resemble chatos? Let the Kohen instead perform two applications that are tantamount to four, splashing the blood against two diagonally opposite corners of the altar in the full manner prescribed for an oil offering, and then let him perform four applications that are in fact four separate ones, placing blood with his finger upon each of the four horns of the altar in the full manner prescribed in the chatas, meaning to act exactly like you do shtaim shen arba, two that are like four, like in a full manner prescribed for an oilo, and arba shen arba, and then to do a four excuse me, and four applications that are in fact four separate ones, placing blood with his finger upon each of the four horns of the altar, just like chatas.
Can you explain this?
So they're saying that oila is the tamid is like oila, But then the Gemara said, no, it needs. There's a pasuk that says that you have to treat the tamid like chatos. So they say, how can I treat the tamid, which is oila, the whole thing is burnt, like oila and like chatos? So he said the applications would be like both. We'll do application of oila and application of chatos. So first the Gemara is trying to say that we'll do a combination.
So like a two for one deal?
Exactly. So you'll bring the tamid and you treat it like oil and like chatas together. Right. So what does that mean? So it says in the applications, because the application of oil were two like four, and application of chatas were four applications. Not 2 like 4, it's like actually 4 applications. So the Gemara said, why shouldn't he do, instead of saying a combination of 2, we'll do a complete set of oila and a complete set of chatas, meaning a full applications for oila and a full application for chatas.
What applications? It says 2 and so then once you do 4 and then 4.
Yeah, what was the difference between the oila applications and the chatas application? So he tells you that the chatas application, we'll start with oila. The oila application was shtayim shen arba, which means it was 2 applications that are tantamount to 4. What did he actually do? He's splashing the blood against 2 diagonally opposite corner of the altar.
Right. So it's a big walk, and there's a run, boom, boom, and then they gotta go to the other one.
So I guess that's why he called it like 4. Maybe that's why he called it like 4, because it's 2 diagonally opposite corner of the altar.
Like
Then that's the oil application. Then when it comes to chatos, let him perform 4 applications, 4 separate ones, placing blood with his finger. Now chatos is placing, no more splashing, so it's being done with his finger. 4 separate ones, so each horn of the altar, each corner had to receive application of blood.
He's going around the mizbeach twice.
So the Gemara says, "Loi matzinu dom shemechaprin v'choizle mechaprin." In all sacrificial law, we never find a situation where blood provides atonement and then repeats and provide atonement a second time. Rather, once a Kohen has performed all of the blood applications typical for that offering, the blood service has been completed and no further applications are performed at all. It's done. So the Gemara counters, "V'chi matzinu dom shechetz echad v'chetz noilo." The Gemara says, how is it even possible? Do we ever find the kind of blood service suggested by Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, one where half of it is like a chatos and half of it is like ola? We said we didn't find any record of something.
It's not half and half. This is full and full.
No, because that's the question of the Gemara. The Gemara said, instead of doing half and half, why don't you do a full chatos and full ola? So the Gemara says, no, it's not possible. Why? Because once you achieve atonement, it's done. There's no, it's a wasted, you're not doing anything.
Done. Right.
So he goes back to, we have a pasuk that treats tamid like oila. We have the actual tamid is an oila because the whole thing is burnt. On the other hand, the Torah says to treat the korban tamid that was brought in the morning and afternoon, to treat it like chatos, like chatos. So he says, so you do, according to Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, I got to do half and half the service like chatos and half the service like oil. So the rabbis are challenging it. Said, where did we find such a thing? That you do either it's chatos or it's oil.
How the Torah tells us to treat
here, right? Amakra, usirizim echad lechatos laHashem al oila satomid Yosef v'niskoy. Sirizim echad lechatos laHashem al oila satomid. Using the word chatos and using the word oila and using the word tamid. It's almost like a big mishmash of the whole thing.
When you burn the oila, you just take the skin, and when you burn the chatas, you take part of the meat.
Right, but I'm talking about the actual service, not
after.
Everyone agrees that the tamid is brought on the altar like ola. The skin is taken out, but the whole thing is burnt. But the service of it, the applications of the blood, they need to be like chatos, they need to be like ola. So this pasuk in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 28, verse 15, says, Seir izim echad lechatos. When the Torah describes the tamid, He said you need to take a goat for chatos, la'Hashem, al oilas hatamid. So using the word oilas and using the word tamid, Yosef and Iskay.
What is niska? Niska.
Nesachim is the libations.
Sometimes
it's-
it's nisko, sometimes niska. Rosh Chodesh.
Right. It's a female is Iska and Isko is a male. But so how do we do half and half? V'chim atzinu, so the Gemara changes. Ela al, this is unprecedented. Ela al kol chonikisha hakos. Rather, we are forced to assert that since the pasuk compared the tamid with the chatos, the tamid is an exception to the general rule, and bears similarly a similarity to both an oila and a chatos. So tamid has a similarity to both oil and chatos. Achanai ba'al chonikisha hakotuv. Here too, then, let us argue that the tamid is exceptional, that it requires the bull blood, the full blood service of both an oila and chatos. Since, after all, we are forced to say that the pasuk compares the tamid with the chatos. The pasuk compares it. What are you going to do? The Gemara dismisses the suggestion. Halson pisuk matanis ba'almei. Says there, as regards to the procedure actually set forth by Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah, all that is involved is a mere separation of one of the blood applications into two. Indeed, this is but a slight deviation from the standard oil service. The proposal you have suggested involves the addition of a full set of blood applications that are fundamentally alien to an oil, and it is therefore to be rejected. Again, indeed, this is but a slight deviation from the standard oil service. The proposal you have suggested involves the addition of a full set of blood applications that are fundamentally alien to an oil. The Gemara further questions Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah interpretation of the Talmud's blood service. But let the Kohen place the first two blood applications, the one that is tantamount to two below, on the lower half of the altar. Remember, the surrounding the altar, there was a chut sikra, and some application needed to be
Under the line?
under the line, somewhere on top.
Right,
So,
like that.
Shtayim lemata. So when it says shtayim lemata, means one that is tantamount to two below on the lower half of the altar. Kamaisa oila, in a manner of prescribed for an oila. Shtayim shen shtayim lemailo, and let him place the next applications, the two that are in fact two above on the upper part of the altar. Kamaisa chatos, in the manner of chatos. Do two below and two on top. Why place the latter applications, which are supposed to resemble those of chatos, on the lower half of the altar in a manner inconsistent with chatos procedures? The Gemara says, the Gemara answers, we do not find anywhere blood applications of which half are placed above and half below. Veloy, the Gemara says, you didn't find? Here's an example of Atanan, but we learned in a Mishnah, he sprinkled some of the blood one time above and 7 times below. The Gemara says, the blood was merely sprinkled like a matzlif. The Gemara says, what does it mean, kematzlif? My kematzlif, machvi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda demonstrated kemenagdo, like one who whips. Okay.
34.
It wasn't done in a
You think the Kohen made that noise when he did it?
when you had the people that would ride the horse in a buggy, or they would ride the donkey and they're sitting on the wagon, and they would whip the animal to get it going, or at least threatened it. So it's the Gemara cites another Mishnah in challenge of the assertion that there are never applications partially above and partially below. The Kohen Gadol sprinkled onto the purity of the golden altar 7 times. What does the phrase purity of the altar mean? Is it not that the blood is sprinkled upon the midpoint of the altar? And the term purity is used here in the sense in which people say Tohar Tihao, the purity of the day has arrived. Hu Tractate Yoma, which is to say, the middle of the day, noontime has arrived. Presumably, this is the intent of the Mishnah. Now, all 7 sprinklings could not possibly have struck the precise midpoint of the altar, but some were applied above and some below it. There is an instance of blood application partly above and partly below. Amar Rabba Bar Shila said, Lo. Agufet de Mizbeach, the meaning is that the blood is sprinkled upon the exposed top of the altar itself. Dichtiv, ve'etzem u'che'etzem ha'shamayim latoyar, and the term purity is used in the sense as it is written in scripture, and it was like the appearance of the heavens in purity. If you look at number 2, it says, let's read number 1. Upon a section that has been cleared of ashes and coals from the daily burning of the incense. Exodus 24:10. The Torah uses this phrase to describe the sublime prophecy that the elders of Israel saw at the time that Moshe went up to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. The word purity in this verse, used to describe the appearance of the heavens, refers to a state of clarity. The Mishnah uses the term similarly, alluding to the fact that the Kohen Gadol was required to clear a section of the altar top of the coals and ashes left there by the daily burning of the incense, and to sprinkle the blood on the exposed, purified surface. All the sprinkling was done on the upper part of the altar, and there remains no precedent for blood applications occurring both above and below. So the Gemara questions another aspect of the Tamid. Another aspect of the Tamid's blood application procedure as proposed by Rabbi Shimon's Isha Mitzpah. According to Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzpah, why is it that the Kohen first applies the standard oil type of blood application, and only afterwards he applies blood in the manner resembling Yechatos? So let's do it the other way around. Let him first apply the blood like Yechatos, and afterwards let him apply it like an oil. The Gemara responds, given the oil, since after all the Tamid is an oil offering, he called Bereisha, the oil of blood application comes first. And for what reason does the Kohen apply the Tamid blood specifically to the northeastern corner of the altar, and then to the southwestern corner? Maybe you should do it the other way around. Let him instead apply the blood to the southeastern corner, and then to the northeast, and then to the northwestern corner. Why choose one set of opposing corners over another? Amrei, so the Gemara answers, Oilo te'una yesoid. An oilo offering always requires the altar's base. And the southwestern corner of the altar did not have a base.
Because the wrap is there.
Yes, so sprinkling blood on this corner was not an option. Having established which set of corners are used, the Gemara questions further. Says, why does the Kohen apply the blood first to the northeastern corner of the altar and then to the southwestern corner? Let him apply blood first to the southwestern corner, and then to the northeastern corner. So the Gemara shows how this particular sequence came to be chosen. Master said, Kol pinas shata poine lo yehu ela derech yamin mizrach. All the pinos, meaning all the turns that you make in performing the temple service, should only be to the right and to the east. Bereisha upoga. It so happened the Kohen would encounter the northeastern corner first. The Gemara asks a final question directed towards Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzvah. And from where do you know that it was with reference to the daily oila offering, the Tamid, that the Merciful One said, perform in connection with it the procedure identified with a chatos?
You know what? I got a question.
1 second. Perhaps the Torah's intent was the reverse, and it was with reference to the Rosh Chodesh Chatos offering that the Merciful One said, perform in connection with it the procedure identified with Oila. So maybe it's speaking about Rosh Chodesh Chatos that needs to be like Oila. Not that the Tamid, which is also Ola, needs to be performed like Chatos.
Okay, here's my question. Okay, if you look at the diagram on 15b1, you see every turn has to be to the right. If you walk up the ramp, let's say you checked in at the bottom of the ramp and you're walking up with the blood. So if you make a left turn, then you can go all the way, and then it'll all be rights. But if you make a right turn first, then the next thing you do is make a left. You see what I'm saying?
You can't go right every time.
You can, if you go up the ramp,
That's
the
right.
first thing is to the left, then everything is to the right. But if the first thing you make is right, then the next thing is going to be left.
No, but if you this is right, this is north, right? So if you
Yes.
make a right,
Yes.
and then you're constantly looking at the base, right? So you're still right, and you're turning around, and you're still making a right turn. Looking at the
so
base.
So you go up the ramp, and then you go like you go.
You're
around.
not facing
Right.
your tush
You're
to
not moving
the
the
to the base. You're facing your face to the base. Your face is,
Face to the base.
and then you're always making right turns.
Yeah, if you're going, but okay, so you're going to go make like a circle when you get to the top of the ramp, and then everything else becomes a right.
I think. I mean, if I come, this is the base. So I'm coming to it, right?
Yeah.
So and now I made a right turn. Right?
Yeah.
I made a right. I'm walking, and I'm making another right turn. Right. I'm still. This is the base. I'm walking around it.
I don't. It seems to me fair.
Or,
I don't see.
I'd love to see a video.
I don't see how we're making a left
or,
turn.
in
or
real life, I
you
would
don't
say
have
real
to focus on your
You're gonna see-
position.
yeah,
It's
real
just
life.
always that from the beginning, when you enter, that's the point that you're gonna have in mind for the right. So it doesn't matter if you go right, left, right. It's always, if you enter like this, the right is gonna be always like this. Maybe something.
That's the left.
Anyway,
Yeah, the left is
we
gonna be-
should see this
Right, so the right
speeding
is gonna be
energies, and
like
we'll
this.
figure it out when we get there.
You understand what I'm saying?
I know. Say it again, please.
From the time you enter,
Yes.
okay, you're gonna look to the right, always the same. It's like when you dive into the east, right?
Yes.
Wherever you are, the east is gonna be somewhere. So wherever you are, inside here, the right is gonna be always the same. Something like this, maybe? No. I don't know.
The Gemara says, "Asar kadaitach," that should not enter your mind as a possibility. Dichtiv aloyla satomid yeose v'niskoi. The pasuk in question states, "And a chatos offering to Hashem, in addition to the continual oila offering, oila satomid, shall it be made, and its wine libation." What does the Torah mean? Midei de chatos shdei ha'oila. Clearly, it means that something usually appropriate only for a chatos offering should, in this case, be interpolated into the oila offering. It says in 13, the term al upon indicates that the procedure of the chatos is to be placed upon the oila and not vice versa. Tenan also Amar Lehem HaMemune, the appointed Kohen, said to them, to the Kohanim, selected to offer the Tamid Tzu ve'aviru Tol Mishkas Beis HaTloim. Go out and bring a lamb for the Tamid from the chamber of lambs. Okay, so they had a place where they had these lambs. I think they kept them for 4 days or 5 days to make sure they don't have any. To examine them, they have no wounds. It says that the chamber of lambs was in the northwestern corner of the hall of the fire. And there were 4 chambers there in the hall of the fire. There was 4 chambers, one the chamber of lamps, chambers of receipts, chambers of fire, and chamber was for, they made the panim bread. Contrast this with the following Mishnah and note the contradiction. There were 4 chambers that opened to the hall of the fire, like suites that open to a ballroom. 2 of the chambers were located in the consecrated portion of the hall of the fire, and 2 were located in the unconsecrated portion. And the tops of posts separated between the consecrated area and the unconsecrated area. And what purpose did the chambers serve? The southwestern chamber, it was the chamber of the sacrificial lambs for the Tamid offering. The southwestern chamber, it was the chamber in which they made the southwestern chamber, it was the chamber in which they made the panim bread. Mizrach is funny, the northeastern chamber, within it, the Chashmonaim concealed the stones of the altar that has been defiled by the kings of the idolaters. Sephonis Marav is the northwestern chamber. Boyodin Leveis HaTvila, through it, they descended to the immersion room. Now, the first Mishnah places the chamber of lambs in the northwestern corner of the hall of the fire, while the second Mishnah places it in the southwestern corner. So we have to figure out exactly where was the Lishka of lambs, the chamber of lambs, situated, whether it was in the northwestern corner or it was in the either northeastern or northwestern. Well, that will continue tomorrow.
So I had a question.
This was a little confusing.
For shops, like I have one of these stretchy things you can
Just
use
wake up.
for to stretch your legs.
Just wanted to say
Right,
something.
it's an elastic thing.